Geno Auriemma is one of the best coaches of all time.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your team every day. My name is Kalia Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. Thanks for being an everydayer and making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. As always, I'm joined with our very own Sophia Jones, radio analyst for the Golden State Valkyries. Sophia, what should we be on the lookout for today?
Today, you guys should be on the lookout for lasting greatness coming out of UConn.
Great transition into all of our topics for today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Walking through what we are going to chit-chat about today, Sophia highlighted it best. A lot of UConn talk today, so if you like UConn, stay with us. We're going to talk about why they remain so elite, especially with head coach Geno Auriemma. Breanna Stewart is set to go overseas. We'll get into that a little bit as well as celebrating some of the top players in college basketball that we also see in the WNBA now. Caitlin Clark has broken the record a couple of years ago. We're going to have a little historic moment looking over that. But let's start off with UConn, because UConn's Auriemma ties VanDerveer for the most AP top 25 appearances. Geno Auriemma tied former Stanford head coach Tara VanDerveer for most appearances in the AP Top 25 women's basketball poll when UConn remained #1 on Monday. No surprise there. They are on an undefeated record. He has led the Huskies to 654 appearances in the poll during his 41-year Hall of Fame career, which matches VanDerveer, who retired from Stanford back in 2024 now. They have been ranked for the past 619 consecutive weeks, dating to the preseason 1993 to 94 poll, and was a unanimous #1 choice from the 31-member national media panel. Again, on Monday, was the 900, so many numbers, 900th poll in the 50-year history of the rankings. So I say all that to say UConn remains elite once again.
Yeah, and those numbers really put into perspective how long-lasting this UConn Husky and Geno Auriemma dominance has been. Even when you look at some of his peers, a lot of those other coaches like a Pat Summitt or Tara VanDerveer, who are also, their names are etched in these history books, and he continues to surpass their records. And just leaving them in the dust. But UConn just continues to not ever have a single let up. That consecutive one, especially consecutive 619 weeks, that's so hard to put into perspective. That's going back to the early 90s. Like, we weren't even alive.
Not a thought,
not anything the last time that UConn was not ranked. So we've known nothing but Husky dominance.
Exactly. We've literally not known anything else besides UConn always being within the top 25. Sophia and I were jump scare here, both born in the 2000s. So UConn has literally been ranked since we were even born, as she mentioned. But taking a look at some of these historic teams that Geno has had, and you mentioned this is a team that never truly falls off. They did go through obviously some time of not winning a national championship. Then they were able to break that 9-year championship drought last season when we obviously had Paige Beckers, AZ Fudd, Sarah Strong, all the elites for UConn that we are seeing now. Paige obviously in the WNBA. They won the 2025 championship. But when we're taking a look back in the history books, if you will, 2016 was their last national championship before 2025. That's when they went 38-0. They beat Syracuse in the championship game 82-51 to complete their undefeated season. the orange hurt that one, but that's okay. But when we're looking at who that team was, Breanna Stewart, she had her Final Four most outstanding player for the 4th straight season. Mariah Jefferson was on the team, Morgan Tuck, Kia Nurse. This was a team that Nafisa Collier was on as well, Kia Stokes. There was just so much talent on these rosters, even looking at that 2025 national championship team where we saw some of the same players, as well as a Gabby Williams, and that 2014 national championship team as well. They were on a run. In 2014, they were 40-0. 2015, they lost one single game that whole season. And then 2016, they were able to go undefeated again. So they never truly fall off. They remain ranked throughout this whole time. And then we were able to get back in the championship bracket this past season. And likely will do it again this year.
Yeah, I think you could even go as far as to say that this UConn team will continue on that same undefeated record streak en route to their national championship. They've just been looking so dominant. A lot of those players that you mentioned on that 2016 roster, generational, a couple generational players now on this current UConn team. But the fact that whenever UConn doesn't make a Final Four, it's almost seen as a disappointing season. I think just goes to show how strong this team has been for so long, but also throwing in the fact that women's basketball has grown as a whole. And so the talent level is increasing and it's becoming, or it's gaining more parity as well. So as opposed to maybe just being, for a couple of years, it felt like UConn, Notre Dame, mix in Tennessee. Then, okay, now you're getting South Carolina into the mix. Then UCLA, USC getting back into it. So a lot of these teams are getting stronger around UConn, but UConn is getting just stronger themselves, and they continue to be the cream that rises to the top.
UConn has always been the face of women's basketball. And this is a conversation we were just having the other day. I love so much that Storrs, Connecticut is very much women's basketball focused. They have a fantastic men's team, obviously just recently won back-to-back national championships. They're ranked again. I believe they're still within the top 10 this season. But the first idea that comes to your head is, oh, women's basketball. That's literally women's basketball country when you visit UConn. And I remember when I was with the women's basketball team at DePaul and we had visited UConn, it's just, you almost get chills walking in there because there's so many banners that are just filling up the place. And a lot of those names up there are women's basketball players. And I think that's the most rewarding experience. And I remember when we had go to play them, it was during a school break too. And it was still a fully packed crowd there. And their fan section is something serious because it's right next to the visiting bench. They are in your ear just yelling at you. And it's just a rewarding experience for women's sports in general to see how much passion people have there to go support the women's team. And even just watching, this is off UConn, but Dawn Staley's documentary I was watching, and the crowds coming in to go support South Carolina as they're going on their trips. You can just see the growth of it, but I feel like UConn has always kind of set the standard of it. And it's nice to see teams grow around that.
Exactly. Same thing that you mentioned with when you think of UConn basketball. I don't know anyone that doesn't think of UConn women's basketball and the greats that have worn that jersey before. But that, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but UConn women's basketball has been dominant for so long. It feels like they were almost the ones that also brought up the men's program at the school, because I mean, usually it works maybe in a little bit of a opposite effect, but UConn women's basketball, because they're constantly setting the standard, whether that's facilities, training, whatever, that also helped to bring up the men's program a little bit as well. But just how you talked about with Storrs being a women's sports hotbed, I think that's so important. And you even see it in the way that Connecticut Sun fans get so many, get a great crowd there at their games in Mohegan Sun. But yeah, it's just been great to see UConn women's basketball setting the standard for so many years. And with Geno, he's he still definitely seems young at heart, but it will be hard to imagine the day that he stops coaching.
Exactly. And I think when you're seeing the success of these teams too, part of it is that connection that he has to his players. I've not seen a single player that hasn't been overly excited to see Geno. Just that really deep relationship that he's been able to create with every single player on the roster and carry that on into some of their professional careers has been wonderful. But Sophia, you broke it down the best. When there are successful women in your life, the world is a better place. So we'll just let everybody sit with that one. But stay with us because we have some breaking news for Breanna Stewart, keeping on this UConn trend and what this means for not only Unrivaled, but the WNBA. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Having to search through engines and trying to look through resumes is very difficult and time consuming. So Indeed sponsored jobs helps you filter out exactly who you need to help you and your business, company, whatever the case may be. So spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. If you're somebody like me, being able to hand something off and move on with your day is incredibly appealing because I don't want to have to think too hard about taxes. A lot of this is a new world for me, let's say, as a new adult, as Sophia has put it before. So I like to just have some assistance when it comes to this. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150, all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Breanna Stewart is headed overseas to play with Fenerbahçe, which is a Turkish team, to be in EuroLeague. This is going to come for the final six. The team announced this on Monday. This is a single elimination tournament to decide the EuroLeague champion, which will be held in Spain on April 15th all the way through the 19th. As we all know, Breanna Stewart is currently playing with the Mist in her second season of Unrivaled. Unrivaled is set to continue being played through March, and then they have some of those championship games as well. But when we're also thinking of the WNBA season, WNBA is set to start in May. They have training camp and everything that would come up in April. So, Sophia, what do you think this means as Sophia, or sorry, not Sophia, you're not the vice president of the WNBPA, but you could be. But Breanna Stewart is also the vice president of the WNBPA. So obviously negotiations are still happening. She has hinted that maybe things are going in the right direction, but now this maybe throws people off kilter a little bit because she has decided to go overseas. We have some things and thoughts on that in terms of she's she just wants to get a championship. But what do you think this means for the larger idea of what's to come with unrivaled WNBA?
Well, right now, Fenerbahçe, I would consider them to be the front runners in the EuroLeague to win the championship. Some of the teammates that Stewie will be joining there are Kayla McBride, Gabby Williams, Emma Miesemann, Ileana Rupert, and Julie Alleman. So they have a stacked roster. I think that her joining them, especially for that final six, so it's just specifically the championship run, she just wants to win a quick title. She's played for Fenerbahçe in the past, so she's familiar with that club. And I think that is another reason why she wants to dip her toe back into that European market again. But the last possible game for Fenerbahçe would be April 19th of this year, which would allow Stewie sufficient time to return to the New York Liberty, if that is who she decides to stay with during free agency. But WNBA training camp is scheduled to begin on that April 19th. However, because of prioritization rules, players are required to report by the start of the season or May 1st, whichever is later. So Stewie would potentially be missing part of training camp. However, she would not be penalized for it. And I think that is the biggest portion that some people were maybe a little confused about.
I think an interesting part of that too, and that prioritization rule, is that this is obviously part of the last CBA that stipulated that veterans under contract had to report by the start of training camp, which you said, or by May 1st, which fell later on the calendar. But whoever missed the deadline would be suspended for the entire year. Obviously, we just mentioned Breanna Stewart has plenty of buffer time to get back, get situated in the U.S. and be able to, if we see her with the Liberty, go back to training camp. But it can get pretty serious when you're thinking of if she was to be suspended for the entire year to go play overseas. But I think it also is maybe just a bigger question of what these negotiations are going to look like, because Stewie was kind of one of the front runners that said, we want people from New York, like the front offices, everybody that's there to come to Miami to have these conversations. And it seems like the conversations in person haven't even been as successful as everybody has maybe hoped for. But will this become even more difficult with her going overseas? Obviously, being the vice president, you still have Nafisa Collier here, a lot of other players that can stay within the States and have some of those negotiation talks. But Breanna Stewart has kind of started to become the face of our CBA updates, actually, in terms of how open she's been with it when speaking to media members about it. But the last time she said that she felt like they were getting a little bit closer. So maybe this is actually a good sign that she's feeling comfortable with how CBA negotiations are going, that she feels good enough to go overseas, come back, and start the WNBA season.
Yeah, I think that is a perfect way to interpret this. She mentioned on her Recognized Game podcast that there's a little bit of movement and traction in CBA negotiations. Even during NBA All-Star Weekend, Adam Silver mentioned that he's heard that there's been some traction and the same positive reports that things are moving in a direction towards an agreement. So I think that with that weight lifted off her shoulders, it also gives Stewie the opportunity to, like you said, go over to Spain, which she has a home in Catalonia. The final six is being played in Zaragoza, but I think it gives her just an opportunity to go over there, win a quick title for a club that she's already competed with before, and then return, be ready for WNBA season. I also think it could be a little bit of a potential 5-on-5 tune-up, because with Unrivaled, that's obviously 3-on-3 format. So now when you're transitioning to W play, it makes sense that you want to experience the full or the game how it is in the W prior to going back. So I could see that as being another line of thought for her. But like you said, even with it's a good thing that these WNBA CBAs have progressed so that she doesn't have to worry about potentially being penalized, because even one of her own teammates on Fener, Gabby Williams, was someone in a lot of controversy because she opted to play overseas and got suspended from her WNBA club.
Yeah, I mean, we're choosing to be optimistic here. Some may call it delusion, whatever. But coming up after this, stay with us because it's always a good time to celebrate Caitlin Clark's accomplishments.
Ever wanted to experience an NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. I grew up in Miami and then moved out to the Bay Area. So I essentially went from dynasty to dynasty, but I still never have been to an NBA Finals. And I obviously know a lot of people that have been, and they really rave and say amazing things about it. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our Everydayer Club. Access an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Women's Basketball compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. So you're all set. An invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. So go to lockedonwomensbasketball.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more.
We're going back in the history books today, and today we are going to celebrate, obviously, UConn's success, but also Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark became the Division I women's basketball all-time leading scorer 2 years ago during this time. It was specifically on February 15th. So this past Sunday, it was being celebrated that she broke a 7-year-old record that was held by Kelsey Plum when she was at Washington. We know that she was a bucket during that time. She broke not only the women's record, but also was able to break the men's record when she had a career high 49 points to become the nation's leading scorer. And of course, she was able to do that when they were playing Michigan. And she did so by having one of her long range threes, which sealed the deal, which was perfect. She was 16 for 31 from the field that day, 8 free throws. But when we're looking at just the overall impact that Caitlin Clark has had on the game, I think on the men's side, you see a Steph Curry and kind of really bringing 3-point shooting as far as you possibly can, logo shots to the NBA. Caitlin Clark for women's basketball was able to break that threshold as well and put on an absolute show for people. I think when you see a lot of, I feel like I always see like NFL or NBA social media clips where they're like, oh, who's your favorite player? And it's always like Caitlin Clark. She has just brought a lot of eyes to women's basketball, which is beneficial, obviously, to the overall game. Women's basketball has been fantastic for a very long time. We just talked about UConn and them going all the way back to the early 90s of being a ranked team and just really being those girls. So having Caitlin Clark being this sort of added addition to really catapult what women's basketball can be and what it is right now, and having all that viewership and media rights, there's no question that she has assisted with that. And a lot of that came from her having nearly 4,000 career points at Iowa.
Yeah. To be exact, she had 3,951 points. And that's actually not that close to Kelsey Plum in second place, who has 3,527. So she's distanced herself even a little bit. And I remember when Kelsey Plum was making her way through college and she was that girl and no one could stop her. And then you look at Caitlin Clark and the way that she just walked through everything and broke all those records. Even her rookie year in the W, she continued to go off of that same momentum. But I remember playing against Caitlin in the AAU circuit, and I think it might have been an AAU. It can be a grind. And so I remember it's maybe your 5th game in like 3 days. It's 8 a.m. You're on the court, just like going through the motions. And I just remember her shooting, or this was like my junior year as well. She's shooting like step back threes right in my face. And to this day, I won't forget that feeling of like, wow, she's okay. The reports were correct about you. Okay. Because we didn't have too much of the technology that we do these days, where I know my coaches to be like, hey, she's a shooter, always have hand up. And it's like, I felt like my hand was right there in her face, but that didn't matter. But that to see that transition and grow through her whole entire career, I think is just a testament to her work and the fact, like you said, that that's a style of basketball that you combine that talent with the accessibility that people have to watch nowadays. And it's a huge reason why we have the platform to talk about women's basketball now, and people hopefully enjoy hearing us.
We can only hope, but you're exactly right when it comes to that. And if we're looking at some of the other all-time leading scorers as well, there were a couple that caught our eye that we maybe didn't anticipate to be as high on the list as we did. First of all, I have to give a shout out to Deasia Fair for Syracuse, because I was there while she was playing at Syracuse. She's all of 5'4" and would absolutely cook you. Fantastic player. She was with the WNBA for a little bit with the Aces, no longer playing. Obviously, I think she's somewhere overseas. But another player on the list is actually Caitlin Clark's teammate in Kelsey Mitchell at Ohio State. She had 3,402 points. So when we're looking at the Indiana Fever and just some of the prowess that they have on that team as well, obviously Kelsey Mitchell put her body on the line this season, and so did Caitlin Clark, unfortunately. Hopefully she is good and back to go for the WNBA season. Obviously right now playing with the Olympic senior team. But looking at college transition over to the WNBA for the Fever, when you have the top 4 within all-time leading scorers on your team, no wonder the Fever were performing so well.
Yeah, and it's the fact that they both went to Big Ten schools that like aren't that far away from each other that I think also resonates even more. And it's very crazy to think that they both ended up at the Fever, but that's why the Fever have had the kind of turnaround that they did. You throw in those players, and Aaliyah Boston, Stephanie White had coaching, and I'm really excited to see where this group goes.
Listen, the Midwest is where it's at, coming from a Midwesterner myself. But thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Women's Basketball. It is always a pleasure. We will see you all again tomorrow.